SATSANG. October 31st, 2019, Tunisia. Well. So, SATSANG of October 31st. We're talking about what you want. Don't you want to talk? Oh yes, I was saying that we were going to do this SATSANG, in Resonance Agape Network. So you don't even have to close your eyes or put yourself in a posture, as we speak, agape in space. So, what could we talk about? Silence. Sister, how did you feel about Baidu's intervention? How I live Baidu's intervention? The impression I have, but I think it's not the only impression that's common, because a lot of people talk about it, those who follow what's being said, either by Baidu or OMA for that matter, or in AYOUN, it's getting more and more striking, that's all. So, it leaves a state of permanence that sets in at the heart level. Well, it's already been clear for a long time, but here, it's more and more evident, there too. That's what I was saying, because you know that every time it's different. In the program, in the content. And you can also see, even beyond the channel 9, all that can be done. If I take, for example, the collective work we started, I posted some pictures, well, and everyone thinks it's great. In other words, today, if we could really stay like that in everyday life, aligned in this present, we would still be in the same state. Well, that's the point, of course. And besides, we were talking about it earlier, you notice that, today, when we try, by force of circumstance or without paying attention, to fall back into the character, into the spectator, as we said, it goes wrong right away. You don't feel well, the fire of the heart stops, the joy decreases. So, earlier we were saying, we were talking about acceptance, but well, acceptance, I would even say today, and it will be the case in November, we have no choice. That is, acceptance is self-acceptance, whether we like it or not, under any circumstances. Not only during the encounters, but also in everyday life. As soon as we accept, we agree, we say yes, necessarily, we can only find this joy. Whatever the problems, whatever the health problems, whatever the problems to solve, because we all have them, of course. So, there is a kind of insistence, we will say, of pressure even, we will say, of the intelligence of the light which makes a systematic call to order, I would say. So, this applies both to a therapist and to any circumstance in life. It's as if there was a kind of ease from the moment we understood the mechanism, because it's not always easy to understand. We've all lived it, in all possible circumstances, but this is different. In other words, the character is like he can't be there anymore. As soon as he is there, there is a call to order somewhere, you feel that something is missing, that you are not complete. That's magical, because you just have to be a little attentive to what's happening on the stage, in here and now, to realize that, if you let go of all the character's claims to be this or that or to go back too far, it's not even an ego or personality problem, it's really a behavior problem. It is a behavior, it is as if the intelligence of the light compelled us, in every possible way, to remain in this state. And that everything is only a pretext or circumstance to allow us, sometimes with a crash, but more often than not with ease, to let what we are be, whatever happens. And that's really something that's not new, but it takes on more acuity, more intensity. And who really puts us, as soon as we accept, here too, but we don't accept what is happening, but we accept, I would say, to let go of this character of trifles, of theatre, that we thought we were, the state of joy rushes in without any difficulty and without any preconditions. That is to say, we see it well in brothers and sisters, good when we live the energies, the vibrations for so many years, we also spotted by the sensations, the perceptions. But even among brothers and sisters who are not living anything, I think it will become easier and easier to see clearly, with reason. I'm not talking about perceptions here or extraordinary things at the vibratory level, at the level of consciousness, but it's as if everything was done to demonstrate to us and show us that we had no way out. That, I think, will become more and more clear. It also corresponds to what Omri called Black November, I think, that's right, compared to Red October. Red October ends in 2 hours, by the way. It's very funny, because if you look a little bit at the gazette of what was happening at star level, it's precisely today, tonight, I think, that Mercury is going backwards, and there are extremely important planetary aspects that are a foretaste of what astrologers have predicted in the first quarter of 2020. Because we are on a theater stage, of course, the planets, the stars, are an illusion, they belong to the dream, but nevertheless, they have an impact on this dream, which is becoming increasingly clear. The inner phenomena like this fire that consumes us, as we feel at times, this joy, this lightness, we will find it, of course, in the consummation of what we had called, what Bida had called the setting of the theater stage. But it's inevitable. Because the lighter you are, the more you accept that the character is nothing. I'm not even talking about accepting what's going on there, but accepting your own character. You go through it extremely easily. And we have all the means, even without feeling the energies, the vibrations, simply by the lucidity of the moment, by being really in what is being living. Simply, we are all able to see the moment when we are centered in the heart of the heart, that is to say that we have transcended the character and that he is no longer in control, and the moment when the character, for one reason or another, sometimes quite justified, returns to the front of the scene. And that is something that seems to emerge more and more clearly to many, many people. It's magical. It's magical because it means that even people who have never been interested in energy, spirituality, what's going on, have, I think, the same opportunity to live it. It's very easy to realize if you're good or not. Regardless of any circumstance, because often we say, we're fine because we have this, because we have a lover, because we have money. No, this is really, you're good with yourself or you're not good with yourself. Whatever the circumstances. And that, I sincerely believe that we will all have the opportunity to see it with greater and greater acuity, as I said, more and more certainty too. So, from there, repositioning oneself in abandonment, in letting go, in the evidence of who one is really privileged at this moment. And it corresponds to what had always been said, I remind you every time, that the more the chaos of the world grew, the more we would be able to see this joy emerge. Regardless of any request, regardless of any meditation, any alignment, any rise in vibration, it really happens on its own. And it's done mostly, of course, without us. As soon as we accept and have seen this kind of game that takes place between the observer, the actor and the absolute, well, it is revealed with great ease. So of course, we don't all put words to what we are living, but when we have the opportunity to discuss with brothers and sisters, totally independent of any notion of energy, vibration or consciousness, we realize that this process is really at work in everyone. It is as if, overall, we were no longer fooled by this game of fools, if you can say so. We were no longer fooled by the character, his whims, his passions, his sufferings, his memories, his projections. It is a lighting that really illuminates the theater scene. And who illuminates the theater scene? Of course, there are all the configurations, cosmic, astrological, of consciousness too, which are there, but simply in the game of the everyday person. Whatever we do, we know very well, if we are good or if we are not good. We can't lie to each other. We can no longer lie to each other. Before, we could cheat, we could wear a mask, as we say, we could play with circumstances, camouflage things, but it is as if we had been so shaved, somewhere, so exposed that, indeed, even with bad faith, we cannot miss it. That is, we have to see him. Well, it's something magical because at that moment, what does it mean? It means that the observer, even if he's not conscious, is still there. That the game between the ephemeral and the eternal, between the simulacrum and the sacred, no longer allows the slightest masquerade. In the sense of being masked, in the sense of hiding. There is a need, spontaneously, for spontaneity, for authenticity, but which we see in all environments. It's very funny, Because if you look a little bit at the gazette of what was happening at star level, it's precisely today, tonight, I think, that Mercury is going backwards, and there are extremely important planetary aspects that are a foretaste of what astrologers have predicted in the first quarter of 2020. Because we are on a theater stage, of course, the planets, the stars, are an illusion, they belong to the dream, but nevertheless, they have an impact on this dream, which is becoming increasingly clear. The inner phenomena like this fire that consumes us, as we feel at times, this joy, this lightness, we will find it, of course, in the consummation of what we had called, what Bida had called the setting of the theater stage. But it's inevitable. Because the lighter you are, the more you accept that the character is nothing. I'm not even talking about accepting what's going on there, but accepting your own character. You go through it extremely easily. And we have all the means, even without feeling the energies, the vibrations, simply by the lucidity of the moment, by being really in what is being living. Simply, we are all able to see the moment when we are centered in the heart of the heart, that is to say that we have transcended the character and that he is no longer in control, and the moment when the character, for one reason or another, sometimes quite justified, returns to the front of the scene. And that is something that seems to emerge more and more clearly to many, many people. It's magical. It's magical because it means that even people who have never been interested in energy, spirituality, what's going on, have, I think, the same opportunity to live it. It's very easy to realize if you're good or not. Regardless of any circumstance, because often we say, we're fine because we have this, because we have a lover, because we have money. No, this is really, you're good with yourself or you're not good with yourself. Whatever the circumstances. And that, I sincerely believe that we will all have the opportunity to see it with greater and greater acuity, as I said, more and more certainty too. So, from there, repositioning oneself in abandonment, in letting go, in the evidence of who one is really privileged at this moment. And it corresponds to what had always been said, I remind you every time, that the more the chaos of the world grew, the more we would be able to see this joy emerge. Regardless of any request, regardless of any meditation, any alignment, any rise in vibration, it really happens on its own. And it's done mostly, of course, without us. As soon as we accept and have seen this kind of game that takes place between the observer, the actor and the absolute, well, it is revealed with great ease. So of course, we don't all put words to what we are living, but when we have the opportunity to discuss with brothers and sisters, totally independent of any notion of energy, vibration or consciousness, we realize that this process is really at work in everyone. It is as if, overall, we were no longer fooled by this game of fools, if you can say so. We were no longer fooled by the character, his whims, his passions, his sufferings, his memories, his projections. It is a lighting that really illuminates the theater scene. And who illuminates the theater scene? Of course, there are all the configurations, cosmic, astrological, of consciousness too, which are there, but simply in the game of the everyday person. Whatever we do, we know very well, if we are good or if we are not good. We can't lie to each other. We can no longer lie to each other. Before, we could cheat, we could wear a mask, as we say, we could play with circumstances, camouflage things, but it is as if we had been so shaved, somewhere, so exposed that, indeed, even with bad faith, we cannot miss it. That is, we have to see him. Well, it's something magical because at that moment, what does it mean? It means that the observer, even if he's not conscious, is still there. That the game between the ephemeral and the eternal, between the simulacrum and the sacred, no longer allows the slightest masquerade. In the sense of being masked, in the sense of hiding. There is a need, spontaneously, for spontaneity, for authenticity, but which we see in all environments. That is to say, we are quite capable, not only as we were a long time ago, of seeing our own minds, but precisely, seeing through the role we play in this character. We are no longer fooled by the role. we know that it is a role, we know that it is something we have to go through, but we have this lucidity and therefore, this authenticity that sometimes emerges, even against our will. Because we know very well that if we cheat, for one reason or another, there is no need to have a reason. In other words, we are able to detect, independently even, vibrations, chakras, states of consciousness, this theater scene, this parody, and paradoxically, it does not take us away, it does not put us elsewhere than really, totally present in what is happening. The truth, it is not elsewhere. Whatever capacities one may have, one or the other, of perception, of vision, of access to the truth, to the absolute or to intermediate worlds. It is something that is happening, more and more here on this earth. In every circumstance, with ourselves, already, but also in every aspect of relationships or in every event that we have to lead as we go about our days. As some have lived through even today, we come to laugh at certain situations that in the past, a few years ago, would perhaps have exasperated us or upset us, they are crossed. And with that, we also realize that the balm is really this joy, this lightness. There's nothing else to do. Even at that level, at the character level. We have always talked about abandoning the research, that we were what we were looking for. There, we have the evident proof, because we play ourselves our scenario between the ephemeral and the eternal. The two are superimposed, they are crossing each other, as has been said, countless times, but today it is something that is, I would say, constant. It is a face-to-face that is no longer a face-to-face with the truth or a face-to-face with lying, but a face-to-face with our intimacy. In other words, we had this, it is as if we had this new lucidity that was expressed in an increasingly evident way, and this, of course, leads to words that we used for a very long time, that is, this form of spontaneity. It's as if the action that was taking place was the right action. We no longer need to position ourselves in postures, in usual reactions, as if the character himself was no longer fooled by himself and was leaving more and more room for the true being. Who is at the junction of being and non-being, who appears through the theater scene even if we know that there is no theater. And there is a form, for many, not for everyone yet, but a form of jubilation, without projection, without request, without expectation, to be, quite simply there. And when we accept that, of course, and you will see it, because many here, today, we are all elders of spirituality, of AYOUN dimensions, of everything that has been lived, it is true that it is not at all the same thing. If we compare the celestial weddings to 2009, if we even compare them to only 2 or 3 years ago, progress, well, if we can talk about progress, otherwise, the transformation is such that it is a happiness, it is a happiness. Even if we all go through moments of reticence, suffering, obstacles, well, as soon as it is seen, without wanting anything, without asking for anything, there is a kind of majesty of the intelligence of light that unfolds and which will reinforce our lightness, which will cross, I tell you, even the ones, what we could call zones of shadows, or zones of suffering, or zones that do not seem totally illuminated. In any case, that's what I perceive. This is what I perceive in my own life and what I perceive in countless brothers and sisters, not only here, not only in the agape meetings but in everyday life. In everyday life, in all circumstances. It had already started last year with the absorption of spaces, essences. When we smiled, people smiled at us, whereas they didn't usually smile. And above all, this notion of inner authenticity. That is, as if gradually, sometimes brutally, we could no longer be fooled by this character, by the circumstances of this world which are nevertheless real, and as we could cross, what was to be crossed with increasing ease. In any case, the intelligence of light does everything to achieve this. So, whether we are in a phase where we are, in moments of absence, if we can say so, or in states, indeed, a little particular for us. I remind you that, even for countless brothers and sisters who do not even know what an energy is, what a chakra is, what a level of consciousness is, it is exactly the same thing. Of course, they don't put words in it, but it's a kind of extremely fast coming and going, which never lasts long. That is, a year or a few months ago, there were, for reasons of suffering, of pain at whatever level, that could last, that could be amplified, but as soon as we are really honest, as soon as we think about what we have already lived at certain times, it happens more and more easily. So all this contributes, indeed, to making us lighter and lighter. Not more and more superficial, quite the contrary, because it comes from the depths and you can feel it. Even people who cannot describe it, this depth, this authenticity, this very truth, is totally accessible to everyone. There is no need to measure, feel, perceive. From the moment we let go, I would say, we let go of our own character, the eternal self, the absolute self, as I call it, reveals itself by itself. So, it's an extremely facilitating aspect, as soon as we agree to let go of this character. It does not mean, once again, getting into vibrations, it does not mean going into a cave or withdrawing to go meditate, it means, on the contrary, being fully present. And as I said, it is in this humanity, in this humility, in this simplicity that it can be found. In any case, as soon as it's not fluid, we already knew that, but as soon as it's resistant under any circumstances, it's because we didn't give up, it's because we didn't see. There are no other options. But, there is no need to see the meaning, explained. When I say, it's because we didn't see, it's because we didn't see what? We have not seen this game between the ephemeral and the eternal yet. But as we see more and more easily, there is more and more ease in laughing at oneself, laughing at life and being fully integrated into the here and now. In this humanity, in this simplicity, in this need to exchange. It is not simply a relationship, it is not communication, it is really, I think we can say it, a form of communion. And not just between us. It can be with any individual you meet, any circumstance. That is, as if we could no longer play the spectator, the actor, while we are still the actor. And we realize that it is, by being fully the actor, by being fully inserted in what is being played that we put down the game, JEU, and that we find ourselves. And that's something magical. Then, of course, after that, there are all the states linked to white paradise, linked to the non-being that some people experience. We hear, there are many who experience it in different circumstances, but I assure you that, for many, many, many people who do not necessarily understand, not everyone knows unity, advent of danger, energy, vibration, there is exactly the same possibility, even if they do not place words on it. They are going through the same thing. And they spot the same things we do. When the character takes up too much space, on the one hand, it creates a malaise, it is the case to say so, and as soon as we see it, as soon as we notice it, this kind of malaise, whatever the sector, is reduced, as if by miracle, as if by magic. As if we had more and more capacities, even without being able to define it, to be in this present instant, in this present and even in the zero time. Time zero is nothing more than, in the end, on this theater stage, it is nothing more than to really be, as I was saying, or I don't know who said it, in one of the channelings, in the service of the other. In the service of the other it is simply, because we feel, even if we cannot put words, not everyone feels that we're in each other, yet it is the truth, but we feel that the other is as if there is no more distance. It also corresponds to what I said in the SATSANG the other night, what Oma said, that is, that Agape is passing through space, he is everywhere. And that it's available to everyone. There is no difference between those who are in a spiritual posture or those who would be in great suffering and would be in opposition, for one reason or another, to this notion of new communication or Agape relationship. We could also call it an Agape relationship, where we no longer seek to defend a point of view, we no longer seek to impose ourselves. In other words, predation and ascendancy behavior on the other can no longer be maintained. Sister, can you tell us a little more about this Agape in space? So, the Agape in space, that's what we said, that's what, for the moment, We haven't broadcast yet, because we had a recording problem, the volume isn't loud enough. I told you the other night that, agape, well, I'm going through all the steps. Today, there is no longer any need for someone who makes and someone who welcomes or someone who embraces to resonate in the other for the other to live the embrace. It's accessible. It is as if, indeed, the information of the zero time, the good news, as they say, was truly omnipresent. It is no longer just adamantine particles, it is no longer just spirit consciousness, it is no longer just vibration levels, it is something that is becoming our natural. And of course, this means, in return, that all the societal rules of the pyramid hierarchy, because society is a pyramidal hierarchy, can no longer maintain itself and will no longer be able to maintain itself. And you can see it in different circles. I would say that the agape meetings, for example, in the corporate world where things are changing incredibly. There are now, what we call, soft skills, in companies, for people who are at the top levels of business schools where we have realized that an individual's greatest competence is not his knowledge. Above all, it is its ability to cooperate, its ability to exchange, its ability to really, truly love the other. Whether it is lower or higher, whether it is a worker in relation to a senior manager. It is as if this leveling, which was wanted by society, by a way of functioning of society, could no longer hold. That explains, moreover, what you are seeing all over the world in terms of revolts and revolutions, that is, what I said and what I am saying again, there can no longer be any societal predation. This one is more and more purely experienced and that is normal. That's normal. It's part of the wake-up call. So of course, it leads to events that are sometimes extremely violent. Because the order says, established, it does not see this with the same ear for the moment. So, there is, indeed, a whole mechanism of functioning, this time, not individuals but society, which is still in opposition or confrontation with this, but we can see that this opposition and this confrontation can no longer be maintained for very long. There, I'm not even talking about cosmic events or the Nibbia event, I'm just talking about what's happening in the most human side of life. In other words, even alibis, we will say, energetic, vibratory, spiritual, we don't need to talk about an archangel to be well today. We do not need to refer to Christ, Mary, Buddha, Muhammad or whoever we want. That is to say, the true authenticity is not to depend on everything that was necessary until recently. To cling to spirituality, religion, societal organization. That's what Biden said. He said, the search for the truth will put an end to your world. And since the truth is there, of course, we're witnessing, there, now, we really have to bury our heads in the sand to avoid seeing it, a scenario of chaos at all levels. But it is this chaos that should not be seen from the wrong side of the spyglass, that is, from an egotistical, personal or habitual point of view, in relation to the mechanisms of society's functioning, that allows this. It's totally joined. So, it's a standing invitation to let what is. More and more, and we all realize, moreover, that if we accept what is, and you are beginning to live it, we have talked about it, even for suffering, even physical suffering, you realize that it is absorbed. They are absorbed by joy, by a change in the point of view of consciousness, a change of consciousness that is also real, but which does not depend on any will, asceticism or a rise in vibration of consciousness itself. It is as if this grace and this majesty, despite the appearances of the chaos of the world, were more and more accessible. Even in family relationships, in the company, I have talked about it, but even with the stranger you meet on the street, there is, spontaneously, something that has opened up. And what has opened up, of course, is this simplicity. That is, there is no longer any need to hide behind any profession, social status or spiritual alibi whatsoever. And I assure you that it is really in this naturalness of humanity, well, it has been taught to us, we will say, for years. Omrayam I think, or even Bida talked about it again about this, of Terezi or the way of childhood. The way of childhood is not about being completely ethereal, completely evanescent, It is about being completely present in what we have to live. And that's enough, I would say. If you're in that position, if you're honest with yourself, there is no reason why something should go wrong with who you are. Of course, it's going to go wrong. We can see it in the climates. Go tell that to someone who lost his home with a tornado, a fire and so on. But even in these circumstances, I think it is only a shaking of the light, and that behind this individual chaos for some, there is also this famous resilience. There is also this capacity to surpass oneself, which is inscribed in man, as we know him, in neuroscience, psychiatry, psychology, which is fundamental and which, today, is immediately effective. And it makes things a lot easier, indeed. Even when you are still a therapist or have children to raise or are of a certain age, it helps a lot. It helps a lot, because even our body will change. There will also be this kind of fluidity in the body that is different. Even if you have disabilities, even if you have difficulties, well, you can only notice that there is a lightening that is being done. And of course, when we get away from that for some reason or other, then, we're going to be hurt. And it's precisely this game that makes it very easy to choose. Anyway, we don't have a choice, but even if we think we have a choice, well, it's quickly chosen. We would rather be let enjoy than suffer for one reason or another. And moreover, when we accept this joy, we see very well that things change independently of our will, independently of any desire whatsoever. As has been said, it happens by itself, and it happens mostly without us. And for agape, it's the same thing. That is to say, we're no longer, as I said, that is, we're not conditioned by appointments at a fixed time, we're not conditioned as we were last year, to call each other, to make agape resonances on the phone. As we said, we think of someone and the agape resonance is done. That is, we no longer even need to think about agape. I said we no longer need to put ourselves in a posture, we no longer need to repeat agape even if it is always pleasant, and we necessarily realize that it is enough for us to think about a situation, and when I say thinking, it is not a mental cogitation to know how we will solve or how we will behave with this situation or that person. But simply the simple fact of thinking of a situation or an individual at the other end of the planet is enough to perform the miracle of light. That is to say that this kind of miracle that we are beginning to see for ourselves, but also in relationships, yes, behaviors, and everything becomes resonance, everything becomes this agape resonance even if we do not know what it is. And you can't escape it. And by the way, I say it again, who would want to escape this? Sister, we live it. What? Sister, we live it. Yes, we live it. We live it. Sister, there is no need to know what it is. We're just living it. That's right. Sister, we're in it. We're in it now. We're getting more and more into it. We are more and more immersed in the present instant, but not only as an individual posture of someone who has found the present instant and who will talk about it, but we all live it. Even if we can't put these words on it, we can only realize it. And this change, it is truly, 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 truly global, and it is it that is the event. As I don't remember who said, we are what we expected. We do not need to know which past life or which future life, because what is important and the source of the path is the present instant. And at that moment, there can no longer be any questions about what will happen, what we will become, in what dimension we will go, not to mention the absolute for those who are still retracting from it, because we know very well that what is happening on the theater stage in our daily lives at that moment is totally transcendent. And do you know, that indeed, as I was saying about what we serve in psychology on this notion of transcendence, of cooperation, we can say about love, empathy, charisma, which is quite real. I would say that one cannot do otherwise than to love the other regardless of his fault. It's not a conduct, it's not immorality, it's not vibratory, it's our humanity. Sister, it becomes a constant, to go towards the other in love. There you go. Sister, it becomes a permanent constant. A permanent constant, and even by thought, as I was saying. You think of someone on the other side of the world, a brother or sister, a stranger passing by. Well, it's not a stranger. He's not a stranger. We can no longer effectively judge. Sometimes we can move away, because what is can be a conflict. We're moving on to the other one. What the source, Baba, said when he was incarnate. If you can't love someone, go on your way. But, nevertheless, we are still in this availability, in this welcome. And at that moment, there is no longer any problem of religion, race or anything else. Even if we are not able to feel and live that we are one in the other, nevertheless in this interface that we have called so far the relationship, communication, well, it is more a communication, it is more a relationship, it is a resonance. We resonate with each other through thought, through the gaze, through gestures if we are therapists, through intention, but which is not an intention in the spiritual sense, but simply the intention to commune, to share. Indeed, we don't need big words, we don't need to say agape, but we do it because we like it. Indeed, like this afternoon when we painted our paintings, because it is a natural way. The circle is complete. It is not for nothing that for a year, Bida like me, we have been talking about this absolute self, the one who has always been there, whatever the worlds are and even without a world. Yes. Sister. And this departure, I feel like leaving, yes. Sister. Every day faster. Yes. Sister. Not in the sense of dying, no, no. Sister. To leave, in other words, to abandon habits. That's right, that's right. Sister. Abandon, another sister, habits. Sister. That's right. I would even say that even habits, there are people who don't have habits and then there are people who have quite a few habits. You have to eat at such and such a time, do such and such a thing at such and such a time. Even that can't hold up. That is, we are completely available for life. So before we used to say, you are no longer your life, you are life. Yes, that's right. Sister. To prepare this meeting, I had moments, a few days or a total change, that is to say the rhythm of sleep, for example. That's right. That's right. Sister. I sleep 2 hours, and I wake up. I get up at 4 inches the morning and it's for me, it's the day that starts. Night everything is intertwined. What I used to do in the daytime, I don't do it and supposedly do it in the night and I do it in the daytime. There are times when I don't know when the day starts and when the night starts. That's freedom too. Sister. And without any problem, I live this normally, without any question or why I am, that's how it is. It's like we are, sister. That's the way it is now. We are no longer bound by habits, decorum, morality. We are held by the non-time, that is, we are available for what happens and we readjust very quickly, as you say. We have, paint, we had to do this thing, we're going to try to do something else, we adapt. There is a kind of adaptability, a flexibility that we did not see before. Sister. And always, it's wonderful. Yes. Sister. All that has to live. It's always wonderful. Wow. And we don't necessarily look for noon to 2 o'clock, that is, before else. Yes, but why is it like this? If it happens, it's because I was like this. If today it's over, it's over. It's that we're becoming more and more available in terms of. We are more and more available for the present instant, because we know that this is how truth is on this theater stage and that is how we are free. As has been said, it is not only an inner or even an outer freedom, it is a freedom at all given to us, which is granted to us and on which we are also resonating more and more easily. And yet, we are fully there. We are not in a daydream, we are not in a projection, in chimeras. No, we are perfectly aware of the daily life, the parent-slash-child relationship. But they are experienced with less weight, with more lightness. Sister. And with regard to the word lightness, sometimes I feel as if I am going to fly away and I make the effort to stay away, that is, stay, don't fly away, stay still, this is where it all happens, of course. anything else to say. And of course, we notice that the more we are in this state and then we listen to each other, the more we feel, for those who feel, what is happening, what? See, there is no need to be motionless, to be in meditation, to pray. It's in the air, it's in space. It's right there. It's palpable. It's something that's really palpable. It's like there's another density of space. Moreover, the whole space does not only carry the intelligence of light, the crystal matrix as it is called, or the freedom matrix, but it carries the good news. Space carries the good news, and present time carries the good news and carries zero time. We do what there is to do, we live what there is to live, and we realize that it is much easier even if there are obligations, even if there are difficulties. We still reach this word of acceptance. We don't know what we're accepting. As I said, it is a principle of acceptance. This does not mean that we should stand idly by. Sister, of being, it becomes of being. Yes, yes, yes. Sister, it can't be any other way. No. And we are once again, more and more, seeing it regardless of any energetic, vibratory or other prerequisites. So, it's not a problem of consciousness, of spiroconsciousness. It is a problem of yes, of the present instant, of lucidity, of presence, because it is when we are present, in what is, and when we also accept that we can't change anything. As Buddha said, he repeated dozens of times, everything that must happen, will happen no matter what we do, everything that must not happen, will not happen no matter what we do too. From there, well, that's indeed the real relief. And we all realize, both of us, that as soon as we let go of something that disturbs us, whether it is the body, whether it is in our lives, well, as if by magic things soften. They soften and they really resolve. There are only things that would still be valued for one reason or another, without any judgment, that could still be painful. So of course, sometimes it was also said by Amram, he was talking about, once again, collective crystallization to take on the suffering of humanity. Yes, it's real. But even that with the intensity of the light, with the intensity of the experience, it can be resolved. It solves itself. All therapists, well, a lot of therapists in fact, whatever their field of expertise, are aware of this. Even people who work in allopathic medicines, so pure and heart chemistry, are aware of this. That is to say, for example, what is known as medical diagnosis, it happens spontaneously. We have the knowledge to, our doctors, but we don't need to think about it. It's like there's a stunning intuition, but it's not quite intuition. A reception is also a resonance to the other. We know. We don't know why we know, but we know. And we can't go wrong. The notion of making mistakes can no longer exist. It's just experiments. From there, of course, what place does it have left in the lived experience for good and evil? This does not mean that good and evil do not exist on the theater stage, we see it every day. But that's the solution. That is, when we remain in this present, in this humility, in this simplicity, whatever our activities, whatever our knowledge, whatever our occupations, well, things are made easier. They're very easy to do. And the one who says today, "Ah no, it's too complicated," but yes, but it means that he's the one who's complicated. It's not life that's complicated, it's us who are complicated. As Nisargadatta said, if you want to be happy, don't want what you don't need. Just stick to what you have. If you're rich, you're rich. If you are poor, you are poor. But that doesn't mean you can't live. On the contrary, that's how we find life. And that, as everything has been written, even if many people still doubt it, it is necessarily what we have chosen. And to accept this even in the greatest of sufferings is already an overcoming of suffering and already a transformation. And it appears more and more lucid. So, of course, on the course of our life, well, we can only notice this greater joy, this greater joy, this greater, not jouissance, but almost, to be there. Because we know we're in the right place. We don't ask ourselves any more questions, why we are like that, about positioning, about a possible choice. Indeed, we follow the lines we used to call less resistance or fluidity of unity. It's the same thing. And everything adapts and adjusts by resonance. I'm not talking about agape resonance, I'm talking about resonance at all, what's called resonance. In the exact sense of the term at the physical level, resonance is replacing the relationship, the communication that took place from person to person, since there is no one there. And it is a relief but immense, 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 for the mind, for the emotions, for the body, for life. Sister, I still don't really understand what it means, there's no one there. So, sister, that is to say, I can't yet get to thee, that's all right. It's okay. It's okay, it'll come. It is not understandable, no, 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 it is the lived experience that is the understanding. Sister, so that means I haven't arrived yet, it's not a question of happening, sister. At this stage of lucidity. You can't do it, you're already there. Sister, it's time, you already are. Simply, understanding is about getting in shape. But getting in shape is the lived experience that lets you there. The more you integrate, and you insert yourself into this present moment, the more clearly it will appear to you. You already translated very well by saying that you are obliged to love, because it is not a moral obligation, it is because it is your nature. See? See? You can't make a difference, depending on the encounters, depending on the people, depending on sometimes you go your way like everyone else when there's something too much to take in at the moment. But there is never violence, there is never rejection, there is never judgment. So, when I say that there is no one, when I say that we are the intelligence of the light, when there is this resonance that is established whatever we do, and not only in the agape resonances or in these things, but in everyday life, when we enter into this resonance, the other, as they say, is us. He is really us. It is in a different form, it has a different history, it has a different energy, it has a different radiance, and yet this difference is crossed, because it is only an appearance. That's why I said, religions, races, what does that mean? Today, more than ever. So of course, there are still some who are ouched, because they are still dependent on certain beliefs. But what do you want the being who is free today to adopt as a belief? What's he gonna believe in? In life, that's all. And it's a great freedom. That's what we call being free of the person. The person will be there until the last minute of your last breath. But the person has become transparent. That doesn't mean we're saints. This does not mean that we are mystics who take refuge in a cave or a mausoleum to avoid the world. No. We're in the world, we're the world. From that point on, we also realize that any questioning about tomorrow, as you said, in the state in which you are, or about tomorrow on a spiritual level, heaven, hell, means nothing. These are beliefs. These are things that we have adopted out of morality, out of faith, out of God's desire, but which do not stand up to our renewed humanity. Sister, yes, and this well-being in the permanent in which we find ourselves, if paradise exists, but this is paradise. We're in it now. Paradise is the heart of the heart. Sister, that's it. We're with all this love, with all this openness, with all this almost permanent joy, I would say. I don't need another paradise. That's what heaven is for me. The fear of death, of course, is completely self-evident. The notion of becoming dimensional or otherwise, is also totally extinguished. There is no tomorrow. There is no yesterday. That was the structure of the person, that was the structure of the story and what we were told. But when you discover the truth, it all shatters. It's not that we're fighting it. It really disappears from our memory structure, from our brain structure. I don't want to talk about neuroscience again, but that's exactly what it is. So of course, I used the words I had in my vocabulary when I talked about acceptance, reception, crossing. Others may use other words, but we all describe the same thing. And above all, we meet again. That is what is fantastic, whatever the religion, whatever the race, whatever the culture, in the same living experience. And from there can only be for eternity. What else do you want there to be? And you will see, and you are already seeing, that things are organizing themselves. All the people who have organized meetings, even if they've had work sometimes, because you have to work. But it's done. And that even, what might be called the unexpected, as some people have lived through this morning, become opportunities for laughter. It's not a waste of time. On the contrary. It's a way to be even more in joy. And it's becoming more and more constant. The more, I would say in a slightly vulgar way, the less you pout for whatever reason, the happier you are and the more you smile. I think it was AYOUN yesterday who was talking about the smile on his lips. You can't help but smile. Biddy also talked about it. Yes, when you look at Biddy at the time, he always had that smile on his face. And of course, for the ego it's very unpleasant when someone smiles like that for no reason. But we recognize ourselves when we smile. We really recognize each other. So don't ask yourself the question that there's no one there because you've found the grail, as they say. This instantaneity. The grail is the treasure, what? The heart of the heart. You have found the truth has found you, and you live the truth. Everything else, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, God, not God, whether he is someone or nobody, it doesn't change anything. But on an observation level, it is really the crossing and transcendence of the ego. That is, the ego no longer has any weight. Sister, with regard to the fear of death, I told you about what I lived when I felt the state of weakness and I was in the toilet, etc. Yes. Sister. And I wanted to get back to my bed and I thought to myself, come on Leela, find the strength slowly, slowly and you will join. And in my head, there's a little voice saying, maybe you're going to die. And the other voice said to him, yes, but it doesn't matter, gently you go to bed, you lie down, if it happens, it happens. I think we had a sister who went through this morning. Sister, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. No more fear, that's normal. That's normal. Sister, that's it. It's a step like any other. That's why I lived it. Of course, this is totally the opposite of the spiritual approach. This is totally the opposite of the approach. It is even totally the opposite of all beliefs of any kind of religion. But it is the truth. Besides, none of this can hold up. There is no karma that holds, there is no religion that holds, as I said, there is no race either, there is no sex that holds. This is evident even in male-female relationships. We consider ourselves, above all, as a human being in the relationship. We don't put sex first or anything else, any status whatsoever. There is really this transparency there. And that, if we are lucid, and we are all lucid here, we can only see it. Sister. And self-satisfaction, you feel filled, satisfied. Yes, yes. Sister. You're fine as you are. You don't need anything anymore. That's right. Vincent. Brother. Yes. Can you tell us about the whale song again? How did scientists perceive it? What does it look like? So they don't know. They simply noted that in August 2009, the frequency, sounds, tones that were in particular by humpback and rorqual whales, the real humpback whales, I mean whales that dive with their tails. I am not talking about pilot whales, which are not whales, have noticed this. In other words, the whale's song has changed, it has become more and more serious, as I was saying. Of course, we know that whale singing will affect many things. It's not just a way to find each other. They pass, as Feham said, light codes, they are vibration codes, opening codes, a little like the ODIMSL codes of meditation 10 years ago. There is a kind of symphony and harmony that is generated. The whale song has changed, because life is changing. Today, as has been said, we would have to be really blind not to want to see to see everything that is happening around us, in society, in our family, in companies, in education, everywhere. It's something that's real. That doesn't mean that everyone has seen it again, of course. But there are really many of us, living it and seeing it. So, the whale's song changed in August 2009. It has become more and more serious year after year. So I couldn't give you the details of the frequencies that changed because I don't remember them. But indeed, we know that whales are the guardians of the dream of creation. It is the Great Mother's geneticists. And of course, having witnessed the end of the primary anomaly, they sang from 2009 at the end of the celestial weddings, for those who followed, the announcement of the liberation of the Earth. The liberation of the Earth, I remind you, took place anyway, a number of years ago. The crystalline nucleus of the Earth, it had been released in October or November 2011, 8 years ago. And today, we're witnessing live I would say, our own liberation from the idea of being a person and having something to improve. We know that in the present moment, whatever happens, even if it is hard, if we accept it, everything is perfect. But the most important thing is the resonances. There is that the more you go into resonance, and I'm not just talking about agape and space resonances, and the more you resonate in your life with the individuals you meet, known or unknown, the easier it will be for you in your life. The more certain you are about who you are and what you are living. Besides, you can notice, there's less and less questioning about what's going on. We're less and less able to program. Of course, for a meeting, we schedule it several months in advance. But if you tell me, tomorrow we're going to the movies, no, I can't. I'm in the moment. So, when it is a meeting with other people, yes, we will schedule them, such and such dates, and we follow this initial intention. But it's never an effort, even if there's a lot of work to do. It is always a great joy. And the reward for this resonance, moreover, is the resonance with life, with space, with the other, and well, it is this joy and this freedom. It's a kind of rapture itself. And I would even say that it is much more intense than experiences of ecstasy or ecstasis. It is much more intense than what I have lived in other dimensions, because I have really lived it. And I have even lived and explained this notion of the absolute, that there is this disappearance when you stand at the edge of being and non-being in the body, but also outside the body. I've been through it. But what I am living there is much more acute, because it happens in the ordinary consciousness and not in another place, or in the heart of the heart. It happens in all of life. And from there, well, when you see it, well, you can only see the changes that are happening, and you certainly don't try to oppose them. You even go with them. There's nothing more to look for. We've been found. We found each other again. That's the good news. This is even the event, even if there are events that correspond to the level of creation, but at the limit I talk about it because I am interested in it, but I do not attach more value to it than what I am living. I'm interested out of curiosity because it shows me the kind of total synchronism between what I am living and what we are living and what is happening on Earth and in the cosmos. We talked about this, I don't want to say it again, but that's not even the most important thing. So, indeed, curiosity, well, when you're curious, you look at what's going on. And, today more than ever, this notion of here and now, of the present instant is the presence. Don't ask yourself the question of absence, or non-being, it will inevitably follow on that. People who still ask themselves the question about the absolute, am I absolute, have I succeeded or not? Don't worry about that, just be as you say in this instant present, live what you have to live, and that's where you have all the satisfaction. And besides, we can no longer ask questions. I happened to experience it many years ago, so I'm talking about it, but ultimately it wouldn't make any difference. What is really transforming, what is really resilient, what is really amazing is the present moment. If you're in the present moment, really and concretely, sincerely, you can no longer be affected by anything. And be careful, when I say you can't be affected by anything, it doesn't mean you're without emotions, without mind, it just means it can't destabilize you. There is a kind of catch of this naked joy, of this resonance, which makes you know, as I have always said, that you can only recognize yourself. It is a recognition, this recognition is total. So, of course, we have lived it. For example, we will have it tomorrow, certainly, when Faham intervenes with the source language of the great geneticist's mothers, where there is not one emotion, but there too a kind of even stronger resonance that is made, that perforates even more, that goes through the character even more on the stage, her. But what we must remember is that this natural state is something that is as natural as it can be and that we can only recognize. And it really puts an end to the anguish, it really puts an end to the questioning. There are no more questions. There may be curiosity, yes, of course, but there can be no question. In the present moment there is no question. If there is still a question inside you, it simply means that you do not fully accept what you are still looking for tomorrow, that's where you are. And that goes for everything, absolutely everything. Sister. Even when a not very pleasant event happens in your daily life, there is no longer this great suffering, there is no longer that. Maybe there's some annoyance. Sister. A little bit, yes, but it goes by very quickly, it doesn't stay, to say and repeat, and remember, no, there is no more of that. Yes, you recognize, it's there, and it passes, there's not the great emotional charge of suffering, of pain, no. It is really a transcendence, that is, the character is always there, until the end of time, but he is no longer the same, he is no longer the same. Everything that was salient, all the character traits, we will say, of the personality, are as if rounded, everything becomes rounder, everything becomes less exhausting. We have all experienced situations where we felt exhausted fighting, looking for solutions, as they told us, let things come to you. Accept to let things come to you because they are already there, you see, and that, we don't need complicated words, it's life that always shows us. And once again, it is the natural state, that is, as I have always said, we can only recognize ourselves. So what do we recognize? The one who would ask this question, well, he didn't understand. When we recognize ourselves, it simply means that we are in this obviousness, in this facility, which doesn't mean that life is easy. Our life can sometimes be difficult, there may still be things to solve, things to settle, but as you said, they don't take all the space. The space is cluttered with the good news, it is full of this good news, it is full of this joy, it is simply because perhaps we still have things to pass, or perhaps for some of the elements that are suffering. In other words, nothing in our history, nothing in our physical, emotional, mental, psychological, causal structure can alter who we are. It doesn't make sense anymore. And all these arguments related to the past, to retribution, to punishment, no longer mean anything, nothing at all. Besides, we know very well that if we tried to, well, it's just not possible, that is, it came out of our heads. The notions of an avenging God, or a rewarding God, or a karma that rewards you, it's a heresy, it concerns the person, but the person we are today has nothing to do with the person of yesterday. It is very easy for everyone to see this. Sister. A person in the truth. Everyone falls asleep. Sister. This is the effect of the hamming. Is it sleep or is it resonance that does that? Sister. Both. Both at the same time. We finish in 12 minutes, so that's it, we won't go to bed too late. Anything else to say? What also interests me is that, before, we used to post a lot of testimonies from people who lived this openness, now we post less, why? They would simply be testimonies of life. Now, since we are all living the same thing, and the setting is changing, but we know very well, here as elsewhere, that when we live this, we are all living the same thing, whatever our life, whatever our age. It's the same ingredients, it's the same result. Sister, I would say, in this meeting, we are more in the sharing of joy, truth, simplicity, than in the witness. That's how I feel about it. For all the others, it is no longer a teaching. We have lived through, we have received important lessons that have allowed us to get there, but today there is no question of teaching anything. Which does not prevent, for example, if I want to teach about crystals, since it was my speciality, from training about crystals, but even in these circumstances, I noticed it. I say that because I did a crystal training not long ago, I realized that even in these circumstances, joy was predominant. Of course, there is knowledge, developing feelings, understanding to acquire, but it is different. That is to say, there is a form of lightness for people who did not come for an agate meeting, who were really therapists, people who care with, wanted to learn. But we learn, even when they learn, with the new lightness. It's not recklessness, it's not, again, being New Age or being completely evanescent. No, we're completely there. So there is really, I think, a real transformation of what we call personality, So, well, I'm not going to get into that now. We only have a few minutes left, but know that what we call the hormone of joy is oxytocin, right? So far, the personality is linked to a mixture of some neurotransmitters, some activities at the neural level, at the brain level, that led to classifications, which are called temperaments. I have worked a lot on this, but today the temperament no longer holds up to this joy, and this joy is transforming by itself. It acts, as we have said, it rounds up the angles, it puts us in availability, to the other, to oneself, it puts us in the present moment, and there is no possibility of escaping it. Besides, as you said, as soon as we escape from it, we feel bad. Sister, it is this joy that becomes the temperament. Yes, right, that's what I meant about neurotransmitters. It's that before, if you had dopamine as the main neurotransmitter, you were a daredevil, you were looking for something new all the time. If your main neurotransmitter is serotonin, you were in behaviors of avoiding suffering and fear of suffering. Today, many brothers and sisters live with another predominant neurotransmitter, oxytocin, which has been called the hormone of joy or happiness. It is also the hormone of bliss. It has nothing to do with other types of neurotransmitters that are linked, for example, to the third eye, which it called epiphysin. It's a secreted hormone that affects sleep rhythms, but never, ever epiphysin, which will give you absolutely incredible visions, but you'll never be comfortable with that, because there's no joy in it. Oxytocin, on the other hand, emits in this joy. The best secretion of oxytocin in a human being is when a woman is breastfeeding. When a woman breastfeeds her baby, oxytocin rises, she is in osmosis with her baby. Men don't know that. But it's the same feeling, it's the same feeling, it's this state of resonance. Even if a mother can be merged with her baby, the word that corresponds is no longer communication. For there to be a communication, there must also be a transmitter, a receiver, There, it is a resonance, and in the resonance, there is a recognition, and this recognition, it is done through all the masks, all the appearances, and it really makes us like the heart. But what a heart, not your heart and my heart, there is only one heart, there is only one consciousness. So, of course, sister, the heart of unity, the heart of the one, yes, of course, there is only one life, and we are all that life, despite differences, despite appearances, despite cultures. It is really something that is magical, because we see it more and more, and not only in so-called spiritual or energetic or trendy environments, but we really see it on all occasions. If we are really honest, it is a question of honesty, it is not a question of intelligence, nor of perspicacity, nor of intuition nor of sensation. Well, we can only see that. And of course, as we have said, well, it releases tensions in a general way, it releases even what is called causality, the need for cause, the need for understanding. As Bhatti says, understanding is lived, it can never be intellectual. That's what he also said when he was incarnate. All knowledge is only vanity and ignorance, not to mention esoteric knowledge. So, for someone who has a lot of knowledge, on the contrary, we use it, and whoever is not has, well, it's the same thing, he lives the same resonance. Simply, well, when we have a speech, when we have lived, when we have a certain type of profession, well, we can use the two, it doesn't pose a problem, but we are no longer held that, because we have put in front, as Omri Mikhail Ivanov said, we have put love in front of it, we have put love in it, we have put love between one and the other, and at that moment, well, it is obvious, that's where we recognize ourselves. And here, all scenarios fall, from any future, from any dimension. There is nothing to become, there is nothing to acquire, there is just to give yourself. And there's no other way. So we called it a sacrifice for a while, but I don't call it a sacrifice, not even a sacrifice, it's a gift, it's a total gift. It could appear as a sacrifice from the point of view of the self, of spiritual pride, of the person, but when you see it, you're obliged to realize that this sacrifice, this resurrection, but it is a gift. It cannot be considered other than a gift, and it is a gift, an invaluable treasure, and it improves every day, every minute, as soon as we are in resonance, when we give ourselves. Because life is a gift and we no longer ask ourselves any questions, spirituality, religion, energy or other, it does not mean that we do not live the energies, because most of us here feel them, we live them, but we also cross them, we cross them in the same way as we cross the sorrows, we cross the events, with the same acuity, the same presence, and also more and more the same ease. In other words, it is getting easier and easier, even if our personal lives are difficult. And acceptance is that, resilience is that. And of course, resilience, for some people, well, you have to fall to the bottom of the hole. We know very well that during certain diseases, during certain extremely serious events in life, people find resilience. Sister. And you acquire a certain level of wisdom, for example, in front of the situations that are offered to you, whatever they are, good or less good, you don't need to think, you don't look for a solution, the situation presents itself, and the solution, at the same time, it is there, and with wisdom, like that, spontaneous, natural, you don't think, no. We became wise without wanting it, without actually wanting it. Sister, that's it. We have become what we are, that is, this love. Sister, Jean, look, yesterday, with Baidu, I wanted to talk to her about this child's joy that I have, and I realized that my words were flat, they could not translate what I was living, so I simply told her, you know what I am living, I offer you my joy and my love. Sister, and then he offered you the same thing. Sister, yes, he offered me, that's it. But then I suddenly realized that I couldn't find a word to say what I was going through. Well, yes, I put words on it, we try to put words on it for those who listen, who hear and who resonate, but indeed in some cases, what do you want to find as a word? In any case, yes, because we are in SATSANG, but when I see it every day, I don't look for words either, I live it. Sister, and the words are flat. Sister, and the words are misleading, too. I thought I would say these words, but not now, it had a different meaning. You know that there is always, in communication, what is said, there is what you say, and there is what the other hears, and especially what the other understands. You're responsible for what you say, but you are not responsible for what the other hears or understands. Sister. What the other hears and understands depends on his level of awakening, yes, this notion of openness. Sister, he cannot receive, understand, that his level of consciousness allows him, at the instant, sister, and what he is going through. Sister, that's it. That's what I was saying, resonance is not communication, verbal or non-verbal, by the way, that there are communications that are not verbal, nor energetic, nor vibratory. Resonance is recognition. We talked about it in the SATSANG, which has not yet been released yet in relation to molecules, how hormones work, at the cellular level. It's not a problem of interlocking keys at all, it's a resonance problem. It's a light emission, we know that. the notions of photons that occur in the ultraviolet, and I suppose that most certainly, we will find in what I call this resonance, which is no longer communication, photons in the ultraviolet that are really emitted in what is called the heart-to-heart, which is called a gape. That's exactly it. Maybe we'll close it because a lot of them seem sleepy, though. We did an hour. So, good night to everyone. Sister, it's exciting. That's right, it's exciting. See you soon. Through Jean-Luc Young. Les Transformations. English translation, LMF.